Bad idea detected. Welcome to Dumbora.
Some people built empires from genius. Others got rich selling nonsense humanity somehow applauded. 1. In 1975, a man named Gary Dahl looked at America, a country with mortgages, gas lines, and avocado green appliances, and realized people were exhausted, not physically, emotionally. The nation simply did not have the energy for one more living thing that needed food, exercise, or emotional stability. So while sane people were inventing useful products, Gary put a regular rock in a cardboard box, added breathing holes like it might suffocate, included a fake training manual, and called it the pet rock. That's it. No batteries, no features, just geology with marketing. And somehow, this glorified driveway pebble became the must-have holiday gift, selling over 1 million units in months. Americans willingly spent money on something children usually throw at mailboxes for free. It was the perfect business model: zero maintenance, zero production complexity, and customers literally paying for a joke. Gary didn't sell rocks. He sold the stunning realization that packaging nonsense correctly can outperform actual effort. 2. In the late 1990s, while Silicon Valley was promising humanity digital enlightenment, one entrepreneur stared directly into the future and thought, what if we sold bottled tap water to people with functioning sinks? Enter bottled designer water, where companies took something nature had been handing out for centuries, wrapped it in sleek plastic, added mountains to the label, and suddenly suburban dads were paying premium prices for what was basically portable hydration with better branding. The genius wasn't the water, it was convincing people their kitchen faucet was somehow emotionally inferior. Some brands even marketed glacial essence, which sounds less like refreshment and more like a Batman villain's moisturizer. Americans embraced it like hydration had just been invented. Offices stocked it. Gyms worshipped it. Celebrities posed with it like liquid status symbols. Humanity went from surviving on free reign to spending $3 on artisanal moisture. Somewhere, ancient civilizations that built aqueducts are collectively rolling in their graves. 3. In 2008, during one of the worst financial crises in modern history, when banks were collapsing and retirement plans were spontaneously combusting, one company boldly asked, "But what if banana bread smelled like unemployment and comfort?" Thus, scented candles exploded into absurd new territory. Not just vanilla or pine. Those were for amateurs. Suddenly people were paying premium prices for candles that smelled like libraries, campfires, fresh laundry, and something called Grandma's Kitchen, which feels emotionally manipulative. The business model was astonishing. Melt wax, add fragrance, invent nostalgia, collect profit. Yankee Candle and its competitors essentially monetized memory itself. Why fix your actual life when your living room can smell like cinnamon denial? Entire malls thrived because people wanted their homes to smell like places more successful than their own. It was capitalism at its finest, selling invisible fire-based emotions in glass jars. Turns out, if you package nostalgia with a wick, people will happily set money on fire voluntarily. 4. In Japan, a businessman named Ken Ahroni somehow unlocked one of the greatest mysteries in commerce. People are apparently willing to pay for absolutely tiny trees. Bonsai had existed for centuries as an art form, but modern entrepreneurs realized they could market miniature trees to stressed-out adults desperate for control. You can't control inflation, your cholesterol, or your adult children, but by heaven, you can aggressively prune a 6-inch pine. Bonsai became a booming business because it combined gardening, patience, and the fantasy of playing God over shrubbery. Some rare bonsai sold for thousands of dollars, meaning people were essentially financing college tuition for decorative twigs. Wealthy collectors proudly displayed what looked like a normal forest after a severe shrinking accident. It's gardening for people who want all the responsibility of nature with none of the lawn maintenance. Somewhere, regular oak trees are standing outside for free, watching humans pay fortunes for their emotionally stunted cousins. 5. In 2013, a startup looked at the universal inconvenience of shaving and boldly decided, what if razors arrived by mail, but with jokes? Dollar Shave Club didn't invent razors. Humanity had already solved facial hair with alarming sharpness. No, Their brilliance was realizing men hated buying overpriced blades locked behind drugstore security like they were miniature swords of destiny. So they launched with a low-budget commercial, sarcasm, and the revolutionary concept of convenience. For a few bucks a month, razors just appeared at your door like masculine Christmas. The company weaponized humor so effectively that customers weren't just buying grooming. They were joining a rebellion against corporate nonsense. It was subscription capitalism with stubble. Soon, billion-dollar giants were panicking because one scrappy company proved consumers would abandon legacy brands if someone simply made shaving feel less like a hostage negotiation. In the end, they didn't sell razors. They sold the dream that even your face could outsmart bureaucracy. 6. In 1980, a businessman looked at America's growing obsession with fitness, Jane Fonda tapes, neon sweatbands, and suburban moms aggressively lunging in living rooms, and asked a question so ridiculous it became genius. What if exercise, but shaking? Enter the shake-weight spiritual ancestors and vibrating fitness gadgets, machines promising toned muscles through minimal dignity. People stood on platforms that wobbled like motel beds possessed by Elvis, believing fat would simply surrender out of confusion. TV commercials featured suspiciously enthusiastic users jiggling themselves into what appeared to be either health or a chiropractic emergency. The pitch was irresistible to a generation raised on microwave dinners. Get fit without all that exhausting movement nonsense. Millions bought these glorified earthquake simulators hoping to outsmart biology. Spoiler alert: standing on a vibrating plate while watching Wheel of Fortune is not Olympic training. But America proved once again that if you combine laziness, hope, and late-night infomercials, you can absolutely monetize wishful thinking. 7. In 1985, someone finally realized that America didn't just love cheese, it loved spray cans. Thus, Easy Cheese took one of humanity's oldest foods and asked, what if cheddar became whipped insulation foam? This wasn't cheese in the traditional dairy-respecting sense. This was processed ambition in an aerosol can, transforming crackers into sodium delivery systems with the push of a nozzle. It looked less like a snack and more like home repair for the emotionally hungry. Kids adored it because spraying food directly into your mouth felt rebellious, like punk rock for Lunchables. Parents bought it because somehow canned dairy seemed practical during the Reagan era. It was shelf-stable, aggressively orange, and suspiciously immortal. France probably watched in silent horror, while Americans turned charcuterie into a construction project. Yet it made millions because convenience always beats dignity in the snack aisle. Easy Cheese proved that with enough marketing, people will absolutely abandon culinary standards for the chance to put nacho paste on a Ritz. 8. In the golden age of mall culture, when America treated shopping centers like sacred temples with Orange Julius and fountain wishes, one product quietly became absurdly profitable: the calendar kiosk. Not calendars in general, mall calendars. Massive glossy squares featuring cats, Corvettes, lighthouses, Elvis, or golf courses nobody had time to visit. Every December, these kiosks appeared like seasonal parasites, convincing shoppers they desperately needed a 12-month wall shrine to NASCAR puppies. The business was hilariously simple: sell people dates they already technically owned, but with scenic barns. And Americans bought them by the millions, because nothing said organized adult like writing dentist appointments under a photo of wolves howling at snow. Entire businesses thrived selling decorative time measurement to people who also received free calendars from insurance agents. It was peak consumerism, paying premium prices to manually track days while standing 30 feet from a Radio Shack. Somehow, we made time itself a gift item. 9. In 2002, a company stared into the emotional void of modern adulthood and brilliantly monetized stress relief with bubble wrap. But specifically for popping, not packaging, not shipping, recreational bubble wrap. They sold sheets, keychains, and gadgets designed purely to replicate the tiny joy of pressing air pockets until they surrendered. America, apparently drowning in office meetings and fax machine trauma, embraced it like therapy for people who didn't trust therapists. Adults sat in cubicles, aggressively popping plastic like Wall Street traders releasing quarterly rage. It was simple, stupid, and wildly effective, taking a free byproduct of shipping and turning it into an emotional support hobby. This was the same country that invented jazz, NASA, and Costco, now paying for portable packing material because life was too much. Somewhere, cardboard boxes were furious they'd been overlooked. Bubble wrap didn't solve anxiety, but it did prove Americans will absolutely purchase temporary satisfaction one tiny explosion at a time. 10. In 1976, a man named Tom Peterson became rich by asking what can only be described as a deeply unnecessary question. What if fish kissed? Enter the big mouth Billy Bass Empire's weird older cousins, novelty singing wall decor. Eventually perfected in the 1990s, this masterpiece of suburban absurdity transformed respectable homes into karaoke bait shops. Suddenly, dads who wore white New Balance sneakers proudly mounted animatronic fish that sang, "Take me to the river," whenever unsuspecting guests walked by. It wasn't decor, it was psychological warfare. For adults raised on wood paneling and TV trays, this was peak comedy technology. Millions were sold because America has always had a soft spot for tacky nonsense that terrifies visitors. It combined taxidermy, robotics, and poor impulse control into one glorious battery-powered monument to bad taste. Somewhere between HSN and backyard BBQ culture, this monstrosity became iconic. Big Mouth Billy Bass didn't just sing. It screamed that consumer civilization had officially entered its novelty era. 11. In the booming self-help era of the 1980s, when Oprah hadn't yet fully weaponized personal transformation, entrepreneurs discovered a goldmine: motivational posters. You remember them: majestic eagles, mountain climbers, sailboats at sunset, all paired with one-word wisdom like perseverance or synergy. Offices spent absurd amounts decorating beige cubicle farms with giant photos, implying your accounting department was basically scaling Everest. For middle managers drowning in fax paper and decaf coffee, these posters were corporate antidepressants. Why raise salaries when you can hang a soaring hawk and call it leadership? Entire companies made fortunes selling laminated inspiration to people trapped under fluorescent lights. It was visual caffeine for the spiritually exhausted. Employees weren't motivated, they were being emotionally screen-savered. Yet businesses bought in bulk because nothing says, "We value your contribution," like a kitten on a branch reminding you to hang in there while your pension evaporates. 12. In 1998, during peak .com hysteria when people thought adding .com to anything guaranteed yachts, one gloriously absurd business exploded: selling invisible virtual pets. Tamagotchi wasn't enough chaos. Now adults and kids alike were emotionally investing in digital creatures that could die because you forgot to push buttons during lunch. Americans, a people already struggling to keep houseplants alive, voluntarily purchased electronic guilt on keychains. Parents spent money so children could experience the crushing burden of simulated neglect before middle school. Beeping plastic eggs became cultural icons, interrupting dinner, work, and probably several marriages. It was capitalism's answer to companionship: all the stress of caregiving with none of the fur. And people loved it, because somehow feeding imaginary pixels felt more manageable than talking to real family members. Virtual pets made millions by proving society would absolutely pay for responsibility, as long as it fit in a pocket and ran on AAA batteries. 13. In the 1980s, America looked at ordinary potatoes, already doing perfectly respectable work as fries, chips, and hash browns, and somehow decided they needed celebrity branding. Thus, the Mr. Potato Head empire evolved from toy box staple into a merchandising gold rush so absurd it deserves its own Senate hearing. This was a plastic potato with interchangeable facial features, which sounds harmless until corporations realized children would happily beg for endless themed versions. Suddenly, potatoes were astronauts, cowboys, superheroes, and whatever licensing department fever dream came next. Parents who grew up surviving disco and gas shortages were now spending hard-earned money so a root vegetable could wear glasses and a fedora. It was produce cosplay. The brilliance wasn't in the toy. It was proving America would repeatedly purchase tiny plastic mustaches for the same vegetable. Idaho spent decades building potato credibility, and Madison Avenue turned it into a detachable face racket. Mr. Potato Head didn't just sell toys. He sold the deeply American belief that even vegetables deserve a rebrand. 14. Somewhere in the 1990s, amid Beanie Babies, fax machines, and deeply questionable khakis, a businessman discovered one of capitalism's purest truths. People will pay astonishing amounts for collectible objects if you simply whisper the word limited edition often enough. Enter commemorative plates, decorative dishes featuring eagles, presidents, lighthouses, Elvis, or children with unsettlingly large eyes. These weren't plates for eating. Heaven forbid mashed potatoes touch them. These were porcelain investment opportunities, according to commercials airing between Matlock and cholesterol medication ads. Americans bought them believing their grandchildren would inherit priceless heirlooms rather than cabinets full of patriotic ceramic confusion. Entire fortunes were built selling wall-mounted dishes to people who thought scarcity automatically meant value. It was QVC meets emotional manipulation. The real masterpiece. Convincing consumers that decorative crockery was basically the stock market with bald eagles. Somewhere today, attics across America are filled with rare collector plates worth approximately one enthusiastic garage sale and half a handshake. 15. In 1977, someone stared at humanity's perfectly functional shoelaces and thought, "Too efficient, let's add wheels." Thus, roller skates and novelty-wheeled shoes transformed basic walking into a recreational lawsuit. This wasn't transportation, it was gravity gambling. Kids and adults alike paid real money to increase their odds of colliding with mall kiosks, handrails, or innocent aunties near the food court. By the 1990s, wheeled footwear became suburban status symbols, because apparently walking normally was for quitters. Every smooth parking lot became an audition for orthopedic regret. Yet the business boomed because Americans adore products that combine convenience with avoidable danger. Why stroll safely when you could unexpectedly launch yourself past a Cinnabon? Shoe companies made fortunes selling mobility upgrades that turned elementary school hallways into low-budget action films. It was a nation raised on Evel Knievel deciding footwear itself needed more chaos. Wheels on shoes didn't improve life. They just made everyday errands feel like rejected X Games footage. 16. During America's golden infomercial age, when remote controls were sacred and insomnia was profitable, one genius decided regular blankets were emotionally insufficient. Enter the Snuggie, essentially a bathrobe worn backwards. Marketed like wearable innovation had finally arrived. This wasn't fashion. This was surrender wrapped in fleece. For generations who had survived station wagons, TV dinners, and shag carpeting, the idea of sleeves on a blanket somehow felt revolutionary. Commercials showed entire families wearing matching Snuggies like a suburban cult awaiting cocoa. People bought millions because apparently the burden of holding up a blanket had become unbearable. It was the kind of invention that made you wonder whether civilization was advancing or just getting colder and lazier. Yet it was brilliant. Take a robe, remove dignity, rename it. Print money. Americans didn't purchase warmth. They bought permission to become human burritos without judgment. The Snuggie proved once and for all that if you market laziness as innovation, consumers will sprint, very slowly, to buy it. 17. In the late 20th century, pet owners officially crossed from affection into full economic delirium, when entrepreneurs discovered dogs were no longer animals. They were under-accessorized family members. Suddenly, America wasn't just buying kibble. It was purchasing canine birthday cakes, luxury strollers, rhinestone sweaters, and spa treatments for creatures that still lick strangers. Pet rocks were one thing, but pet fashion? That was capitalism realizing people would spend mortgage-level money dressing a bulldog like Liberace. Entire boutique empires flourished because suburban households decided Muffin the Pomeranian deserved seasonal outerwear. Somewhere, wolves were roaming forests in stunned ancestral disappointment. The genius of the business wasn't helping pets. It was convincing humans that a chihuahua in a raincoat represented responsible love. Dogs, blissfully unaware, continued eating socks and barking at ceiling fans. But America kept swiping credit cards because nothing says emotional stability like a $75 tuxedo for an animal whose greatest ambition is chasing a tennis ball into traffic. 18. In the booming age of roadside America, when RVs ruled highways and gas station coffee could dissolve a spoon, someone unlocked absurd genius by monetizing one of humanity's oldest biological guarantees: using the bathroom. Pay toilets became a surprisingly profitable empire built on the breathtaking confidence that desperation always beats principle. Imagine driving Route 66 with 2 kids, a thermos, and bad timing, only to discover relief now costs a dime. It was capitalism at its most intimate, literally charging admission to your own survival instincts. Americans grumbled, paid, and probably swore vengeance. But businesses knew one thing: bladder economics are undefeated. This wasn't customer service. This was hostage negotiation with plumbing. Entire fortunes trickled in because society collectively agreed that public inconvenience could absolutely become revenue. Eventually, backlash killed much of the trend. But for a glorious period, entrepreneurs made serious money standing between citizens and basic dignity. It remains one of history's boldest business models, monetizing panic, one locked stall at a time. 19. Then came the era when entrepreneurs realized America's greatest renewable resource wasn't oil, steel, or innovation. It was boredom. And boredom gave us the fidget spinner, a toy so gloriously pointless it became a billion-dollar sensation by doing almost nothing. It spun. That was the pitch. Not taxes, not transportation, not survival. Rotation. Schools banned them, offices hated them, and parents everywhere funded the madness because somehow this tiny plastic ceiling fan was marketed as focus, therapy, and entertainment all at once. Every gas station, mall kiosk, and suspicious checkout aisle became a spinner dealership overnight. Adults who once mocked hula hoops and disco suddenly had desk gadgets whirling like miniature helicopter failures. The true brilliance was speed. Manufacturers sold millions before society had time to ask the obvious question: why? It was the corporate equivalent of selling air guitar picks. Fidget spinners didn't solve stress. They simply gave restless hands something to do while civilization quietly questioned itself. 20. In 1982, a man looked at the simple, dignified act of eating breakfast and decided it needed more sugar, more licensing, and significantly less nutritional credibility. Thus exploded the empire of novelty breakfast cereals, products that transformed cereal aisles into Saturday morning hostage situations. Suddenly, parents weren't buying corn or oats. They were buying marshmallow galaxies, cartoon mascots, and cereals shaped like ghosts, sharks, or whatever executive had recently consumed too much espresso. These weren't meals. These were edible toy commercials disguised as breakfast. Entire fortunes were built, convincing children that the path to personal happiness began with artificially colored milk and a free plastic submarine at the bottom of the box. Boomers who grew up on sensible toast watched their Gen X children demand cereal endorsed by talking tigers and count vampires. It was marketing brilliance so aggressive it made orange juice seem lazy. America didn't just monetize breakfast. It turned the most important meal of the day into a sugar-fueled negotiation between cartoon propaganda and exhausted parenting. Nothing says capitalism quite like a 7-year-old emotionally blackmailing you for chocolate-flavored wheat confetti. 21. Then came the bottled air business, because apparently selling water wasn't ambitious enough. Some entrepreneur, staring directly at mountains and possibly laughing, realized humanity might actually pay for oxygen if you trapped it in a can and added enough branding. And somehow, they were right. Fresh mountain air, Canadian wilderness, pure alpine breath. Suddenly people were purchasing what trees had been recklessly giving away for free since the dawn of time. Tourists bought canned atmosphere like it was luxury cologne for their lungs. It was less a product and more a breathtaking insult to common sense. Americans, especially those raised during the golden age of roadside attractions and miracle gadgets, embraced it because novelty plus packaging has always been our national weakness. Why simply inhale outside when you can pay $19.99 for artisanal respiration? Somewhere, every forest in America collectively sighed. This was capitalism ascending to its purest form, monetizing the invisible. We had officially reached a civilization advanced enough to industrialize breathing and call it innovation. 22. In the glorious age of television shopping, before social media influencers convinced people to buy powdered mushrooms and emotional support water bottles, there was one kingdom of absurd riches: the home shopping network. This was where velvet-voiced salespeople could sell cubic zirconia, ceramic angels, or self-stirring coffee mugs with the urgency of a NASA moon launch. Millions of Americans, many sitting comfortably in recliners forged by La-Z-Boy itself, called toll-free numbers to buy decorative swords, miracle mops, or gold-plated commemorative coins they absolutely did not need. It was retail theater for the living room generation. Hosts smiled like game show prophets while demonstrating products nobody had previously considered missing from life. Egg separators shaped like chickens, pants hangers with European engineering, garden gnomes with solar lanterns. Entire empires rose because boredom, convenience, and persuasive enthusiasm created the perfect storm. This wasn't shopping. It was televised financial improvisation. America proved once again that if you say limited supply with enough confidence, someone in Ohio will absolutely buy a rhinestone paperweight at 2:14 a.m. 23. But the undisputed heavyweight champion of stupid business ideas came when entrepreneurs discovered the holy grail of profit, selling absolutely nothing. Enter nothing as a product. Literal empty boxes, jars of nothing, gift cards for nothing, and novelty packages proudly containing the physical manifestation of zero. This was not philosophy. This was retail. People paid real money to give friends a box of air as a gag gift, proving once and for all that human civilization peaked somewhere around the invention of indoor plumbing and has been freelancing ever since. Companies made millions packaging emptiness with slogans like, "The perfect gift for someone who has everything." Of course it was. It was also the perfect gift for someone you secretly hated. Adults with mortgages, retirement plans, and lower back pain willingly purchased vacuum-sealed sarcasm. And the truly terrifying part? It worked beautifully, because by then, America had fully mastered the art of buying irony. We started with pet rocks and somehow evolved into purchasing weaponized emptiness. That's not just business. That's a standing ovation for capitalism and clown shoes. Which disaster deserves the crown of stupidity? Rocks, air, or literally selling nothing?